Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show today. I'm really glad you could join us today. We are talking about how to create explosive growth in your organization by addressing one of the biggest factors that controls how many sales you make, which is your sales force. Are you hiring the right type of salespeople? Are you training correctly? Are you getting the best performance out of your sales team? That's exactly what we're going to decode today. So with us today is Bella Verita. Now, Bella is the CEO and Chief Sales Sorceress at Align Sales Agency. According to the 2018 State of Women-Owned Business Report by American Express, as of 2018, there were 12.3 million women-owned businesses in the U.S., generating $1.8 trillion a year in sales. That's a lot. That's awesome. Yeah. Today, over 40% of businesses are owned by women, and Bella is part of that statistic. Align Sales is the first female-led sales agency for women sales professionals in the United States. Bella's sales agent is one that stands out in the industry, being a mostly woman agency. Formed in 2018, the agency's focus is to solve problems, sales problems, and processes for service-based companies. And with Align, Bella also teaches people to become sales professionals and also helps a lot of organizations hire and onboard and get the best performance from their actual sales team. So Bella, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And I just want to make a quick correction. It's the Chief Sales Sorceress, because we source magic when it comes to sales.
See, I'm a credit guy. See, my mind just automatically pulls score out of the word. So I like sorcerer.
It did. A source, yes, because we make magic happen.
I love it. It's just when I see anything even with score letters in it, I'll just pull out credit score. I do it all the time. Sorry.
I love it. No, it's all good.
I'm really glad you could join us today and be with us as a sorceress. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So I wanted to point out that you're a women-owned entrepreneur, a women-owned business, and you help a lot of women-owned organizations, but you also help a lot of men-owned organizations as well. So everybody tuning in today, what we're going to do is really going to help you no matter whether you're a man or woman entrepreneur. Is that pretty spot on, Bella?
Yeah, it's spot on, because I think even with like the men that I work with, it's more of like that heart-centeredness. So the clients that we serve are heart-centered, impact-driven entrepreneurs, and they're really looking for heart-centered sales professionals. They're not looking for like, that Grant Cardone, power hard close. So, we say female, but it's really a certain type of person, and it's that really heart-centered, impact-driven.
All right, well, let's start there, because I think that's interesting, because I think you did a pretty good job describing Grant the way that you did, because I kind of see it the same way. You've got these two different kind of sales worlds. So tell us a little bit more about the difference between these two.
Yeah, so, the traditional, Grant Cardone style, which is awesome, I'm not knocking it. There's not any right or wrong. Like, some things work for some people and some don't. But it in this day and age, it's a very aggressive, pushy, hard close, getting people to make, a decision. Whereas, a heart-centered sales is more about transformation and getting people to make a decision that will transform their lives. In my opinion, it's more sustainable, because when you have that pushy, hard, close, and you push people to make a decision, there tends to be like a lot of buyer's remorse, or, wanting to pull back from the deal, versus like an actual, a clear yes that they have committed to, because they understand the value of the choice that they're making.
Makes perfect sense. So what do you think is the biggest barrier of the clients that you help when it comes to really hiring a high quality salesperson?
So two things. The very first thing is, when hiring a salesperson is, there's a lot of different qualities that you're looking for, but the biggest mistake that you can make is trying to hire someone that is similar to you. You typically, your salesperson, and I said this, but your salesperson, you tend to have kind of a love-hate relationship with. Because salespeople, if given the freedom and the space, they will deliver. They don't like to be micromanaged. They like to, get results. And so if you give them the freedom to do that, they will. If you want to tend to like micromanage and, give a lot of forms and documentations and, processes for salespeople to follow, then you're going to lose them, and the results are going to go down. Salespeople love stories, not processes. that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense to me. And I think we're in a world now where stories sell
Yeah.
better than anything else. Actually, we've probably always been in that world, but now we're just starting to realize it. So
Yeah.
when it comes to what kind of factors do we look at when I'm sitting across the table from a candidate, what am I really looking at to determine the difference between, because like you said, there's clear difference. I mean, the heart selling type of salesperson, these are the ones that the customer's satisfied, retention is better. We don't have chargebacks. We don't have refunds. What I found is the hard salesperson, we have the opposite of that. A lot of chargebacks, a lot of refunds, a lot of problems, a
Yeah.
lot of unhappy customers. So when we're sitting across from these candidates, Bella, what are we really looking for to know that this person has the characteristics that could be a good salesperson in our organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have one secret that I do in every interview for a salesperson. Should we give it to your people?
I love it. I'm waiting.
We should give it away. All right. So when I sit down, whenever I have someone come to an interview, the very like, after we say hello, how are you? Thank you for coming, all of that stuff. The very first thing I will do is I will say, okay, Ty, sell me that poster behind you. Or if it's like, if they're coming into your office, like, okay, sell me this tissue box. Like instantly putting a salesperson on the spot, because what you're looking for in this is a great salesperson will take immediate action and is always ready to go. So with that, you're putting them in the hot seat, and they'll go, one of two things will happen. They'll be like, oh, I'm not ready. Like, I don't know. Like, I need 5 minutes. Like, I'm not sure I can like do this. And they'll like kind of get nervous and they'll, okay, let's go. So then in that you instantly know, because a good salesperson is always ready to have a sales conversation, or always ready no matter what. So if that's their reaction, then you instantly know 3 minutes into the conversation, they're not going to be a great salesperson. If they're like, okay, sell me this poster behind you. And then they start and they're like, okay. All right, Ty. So tell me, are you in the market for a poster right now? Or they start asking questions. That is your number one sign of an amazing, excellent salesperson, is they start by asking questions. That's key number one.
That's really awesome. And it doesn't really even matter the kind of questions they ask, because when you put them on the spot like that, I'd imagine they're trying to decode things in their heads. They're just rolling out questions to try to figure out how they're going to establish a path forward.
Yeah, and how and what they're looking for is like, because then the second thing that will happen, with salespeople. So, your A salespeople are going to start by asking questions. Your B level salespeople will start trying to sell you the poster. Okay, Ty, thank you for coming in today. I have this amazing poster that I want to show you. I can't wait to tell you all the benefits and features of this poster, right? So they'll instantly try to go in for the sale, but your A plus salespeople will always start with questions. And that's the biggest thing that you're looking for, because that's also like the transformational sale, right? If you're doing solution-based selling versus, what we call like, product pushing versus solution selling.
So let me ask you a question, Bella. Let's say that we're doing this interview, right? And this person blows us away. I mean, they hit every mark that we think as an employer could be good, but they really fail at this. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm on the spot. I don't know. What do you do in that situation? Because there's a difference between somebody that can be trained and somebody that can't be trained. So
Yeah.
is that somebody you hire, or like based on this, really, if they can't get this right, you really got to consider passing?
Well, it's if they hit all of the other marks, and they are, and you want your organization to be more of a solution selling versus a product pushing, that is a habit that you can transform.
So let's start there. Actually, I want to get to that. I want to figure out how to get that kind of performance from somebody there. But do you find when hiring salespeople that there's a better place to look than others? Like, is Indeed better than Craigslist? Have you found, because you probably help a lot of organizations load up on salespeople, have you found that there's a better place to go to look for these people initially?
So we are in a specific niche market in the coaching and consulting space. And so most of the agents that we place actually come through our training. So I have a remote high ticket sales training that we do. And so in our organization, I usually will only place people that I have personally trained or there's a few others in this specific niche that that I also have great relationships with, that I know are great sales trainers, and so I'll help place those people as well. But I don't, in this particular market, I don't tend to go to like the Indeed or the LinkedIn or anything like that, because it's a different type of sell. A remote, high ticket, face-to-face sale is very different than like a consultative
Sure.
type sell, or medical device, or anything like that. So I'm really niched into the coaching, consulting, service-based business.
Have you found certain personalities do better than others, whether it be an astrological sign like Leo versus Aries, or whether it just be, type A, type B, whether it be introvert, extrovert? Have you just found that there's this formula, even disc profiles? Have you
Yeah.
found like certain things that just really naturally good salespeople have in those areas that others don't?
Yeah, definitely. So we have everyone do the disc profile, and the high D and the high I are your best salespeople, the dominant and influence, because they can influence people's buying decisions. And the dominant personality, they don't have a fear of rejection, because a lot of things with sales, like you're consistently facing like fear of rejection and like all of this, and those high DIs don't really have, they're not really, someone says no to them, they're like, okay, next.
I love that. And it sounds like you've got a great system for bringing them in and then cultivating a good salesperson and then getting them to a point where they're trained and ready. So what does that process look like when you start bringing a salesperson on board? What kind of steps do you take to really get them trained the right way to be hyper effective?
Yeah. So when they come into our organization, what we do differently than any other trainings in this space is, there's a back end course, but really we spend 2 days of solid role play, and role play and feedback, and role play and feedback. So that's what we do inside of our training. When we do hiring, we have a whole hiring scorecard that we take people through. How do they, and we rate them 1 to 5 in about 25 different areas. And we go through all of those areas and rate them, A, B, or C. And then based on how they score, then we know if they're, trainable or, coachable to then enter into the sales space. And then we'll take them through our 2 day, role play training. And then when we go to, place them, we're aligned sales. So our whole thing is really aligning a salesperson with an opportunity, because the biggest thing that I say with like selling from the heart is they have to love the product. Like, it's out of alignment if you have a 50-pound overweight person trying to sell fitness training. Like, it's not aligned. And so we really specialize in really what are people's like passions, and aligning them to offers, because that's when they really get to sell from their heart with influence and passion.
Yeah, it's when they really love what it is they're selling, they're
Yeah.
passionate about it.
Yeah. Like, I have a gal right now. She used to be a hairdresser, and she got out of the business like 10, 12 years ago. Like, love sales. I put her on an offer. She started right when the pandemic shut the world down, right in March. And the offer is, he helps salon owners go from 6 to 7 figures. And so she's been on that offer since March. I believe it's a $12,000 offer. And she's still selling at 70%. And like, salons aren't even and back in March, like, they were all shut down completely. And she loves helping salon owners so much, and she can sell so passionately from her heart that even when salons were closed, she was still closing at 70%.
So with what you do they work for you, and then you or like in that case, will she permanently end up working for that company that she's helping now, or will she always work through you?
No, so that's what we are a little bit differently, work differently as an agency than a typical agencies. So I work on a placement model, because I discovered that, like, if you're in a relationship, right? And you have a third person that comes into your relationship, things in that relationship might not go so well. You feel me?
Oh, I got you.
So,
I've been there.
yeah, it doesn't work out all that well. And so I really looked at this, where it didn't make sense to me that you would have, an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a salespeople, and then you would have this entity in the middle of that relationship. So I pulled that out and went to a placement model where the agent works directly for the entrepreneur, because then there's not somebody in the middle of that relationship. There's a connection that's made. They love the entrepreneur, and they're more inapt to serve that entrepreneur. And then we have some management offers where we just help, with the sales training and stuff like that. But everybody works for the entrepreneur. They work in-house, and we give them all the tools that they need to onboard and to their KPIs, and continue to manage them in-house. So we give them all the tools that they need and support that they need.
So I'm interested, role playing, you obviously are an expert at getting salespeople and cultivating to be good. So what have you found that's so effective about role playing? Because you were very insistent. You're like, it's role playing versus other kind of training, and you must have tested it a lot. So what do you find role playing is so effective in training salespeople?
Yes, it's because of the micro distinctions. So there's a statistic that in sales, if you have a mastery rate of 9.9, you're making about $150,000 a year. If you have a mastery of 9.99, you're making about 1.5 million a year.
What?
And
That's
so it's
crazy.
Yeah. So it's micro distinctions. And so in a role play call, through role playing is you're able to make these micro distinctions of energies, right? Because there's four energies in a sales transaction. There's fun energy, aspirational, goddess, and Zeus. So where are those energies in a sales call? There's indispensable elements, and so there's these little just micro distinctions that people don't realize they're doing consciously or subconsciously, unless someone is paying attention and giving them feedback and being able to make those micro distinctions in energy, in vocabulary, in listening.
So that's a big deal. I mean, 99 versus 99.9, less than a percent difference between 10x revenue. So let's dive into that. I mean, what are some of these micro distinctions? Like, can you break down maybe this common 2 or 3 that you commonly see that you're tweaking in this training to help somebody be like that 10x more effective?
Yeah. So we talked about earlier, the high DI, right? So the high I is very aspirational, influence, excited, can get people to make decisions. Like I always say, people would follow me anywhere, even if I walked off a cliff. They'd be, I don't know where the F she's going, but I'm just gonna go with her, because it's just that energy force. It's that aspirational energy. Right. And so, however, one of the distinctions that I typically make in a lot of our role play calls is that energy is great, but with the Zeus energy is also your energy of certainty. So you can be aspirational and you can bring that energy up and people will be excited, but it's that certainty in and making decision. And also in that Zeus energy is how to lovingly call people out. So that's the difference between the Grant Cardone style and the heart-centered sales is, you could say it's so we recently did a call breakdown, and I'm remembering in that. So he was very aspirational, and that thought this woman was the perfect fit. And the micro distinction was, so she had talked about she wasn't where she wanted to be in her business, and she didn't have processes and systems to be able to get her to that next level. And the offer that he was selling was all about processes and systems. And so when the price of real and the closing came, she's like, I don't know if I can do all that. And so the loving call out is, okay, so Ty, let me get this right. Is that you're not where you want to be because you don't have your processes and systems. Yet, I'm offering you a solution for processes and systems, and you're not taking up on that. So do you think there's something present in you that is just resistant to actually doing processes and systems. Very lovingly, but like, I'm like, what the F are you thinking? That, you need processes and systems. You're not where you want to be because you don't have your processes and systems. What the F is going on that you wouldn't take that step? Like, that would be like that very aggressive energy where you can say the exact same thing from a place of certainty because you're so committed to what it is that they need in their life to make that step without being attached to the result.
Makes perfect sense. Wow. And those micro distinctions make that much of a difference. That's crazy. 10x results just between that. So what kind of traits do you think that you can train into a salesperson, or what kind of things do you think are like red alerts that you should stay away from that are traits you really can't train out of somebody?
That's a really great question. I want to say this too, because it was coming up on the micro distinctions real quick. And I'll go back to this question is like the other micro distinction is what we call level 5 listening, and listening for what is not being said. And because like that's, you can get a lot of information that way. So that's another micro distinction that we go through in our trainings is like, when you're on calls or you're in front of someone, like, what is it that they're not saying? So with though, what are like the complete red flags is and I believe anything is trainable. I just got done reading the book Personality Isn't Permanent, and so we really truly have the ability to change anything about ourselves, or we can train. I would think the biggest thing would be if they're coachable, right? Like if they're not coachable, if they're not willing to receive feedback, and that's like also, that's another thing, like in an interview, and this actually comes from the late Chet Holmes, who's like, one of the greatest sales trainer that ever lived. So one of the things that he used to do in all of his interviews is he would say, I don't really think you're the right fit. And he would see how they would respond. And if they were like, okay, like, thank you for your time, then he'd be like, okay, there's the door. And yet, or if they were like, what he was looking for was, well, what is it that you need to hear so that I am the right fit? Like, and he uses an example. One time he did that in an interview, and the guy was like, well, do you need to have your ears cleaned out? Like, have you not heard anything I said? And he hired him on the spot, and he was one of the best salespeople. So I think the biggest thing is are they coachable? Like, do they believe in themselves? Because that's the biggest thing to train in a salesperson. Is the biggest thing that's hard to train is like just that core belief that they're freaking awesome.
So it's a confidence issue. Really?
I would say that's probably like the hardest thing to train for.
What skills do you think that every salesperson should master?
Listening is number one. Like really mastering the skill of listening, mastering the skill of acknowledgement, which is also like matching and mirroring. Because when you are having a conversation, you want to meet people where they're at, and then bring them to where you want them to go into the conversation. So matching and mirroring, how to use scarcity with integrity, like not a scarcity of, I have 5 seats left when you have 100, like that's not a scarcity with integrity. But the scarcity around, what happened, the cost of inaction. Matching and mirroring, acknowledgement is a huge skill when it comes to sales, like being able to, listen and acknowledge people. And then I think also, and there's about like 10 different ones, but the other one that with salespeople is that they just don't hear no. Like I remember the first time when I was super young, and one of my friends, we were like trying to negotiate doing something together, and she was like, you just don't hear no. And I didn't realize at the time that was a compliment, but like you just don't hear it. It's like a no just means I need to ask more questions.
Yeah, my kids are like that, especially my daughter. Like, I think kids are the best negotiators because they're like that.
Totally.
They just don't hear no.
They don't hear no.
What kind of trainings do you, ongoing training, that's obviously important to an organization,
Yeah.
but what kind of training ongoing do you think is essential for salespeople to be going through?
So there's two areas, and some companies, they'll be good in one area and not the other. Sales managers can tend to be good in one area and not the other. But you want to have training in your KPIs. So your numbers are important because what's not measured can't be improved. So numbers are important, having clear KPIs. And then secondly is that aspirational, the motivation. So salespeople are, they're motivated, inspired by recognition. So, one of the biggest reasons that we have like an ongoing like management offer is if a company has 1 to 2 salespeople, there's really not a lot of energy there, right? It's not like the stockroom floor or a sales floor with 100 people on it. And so salespeople thrive in competition. And so being able to, give, I always say like non-monetary based incentives, meaning if like they hit certain KPIs, like, they get dinners out, weekend trips, like these kinds of things that they might not normally like spend their money on. That's huge. So that's like under the aspirational bucket, and making sure you have weekly and monthly recognitions where the salespeople are recognized for, their greatness. And then, so like I'm doing a corporate training every week, and, every week it's, setting their goals, raising their standard for their goals, and then implementing a new tool for them to practice in their sales because it gives them something exciting new to try. And like, salespeople are a lot like children. You got to keep them rather entertained.
I love that. I love the introduction of a new tool, something they should be working on. Because that's one of the problems I find, Bella, is that like when you say a lot of things that are brilliant, right? And when we're done with this, I'm going to my sales manager like, you got to listen to this call. We got to dive in and look at this. And he might take a skill and then teach it to the sales team and then another skill. But then it's like they forget, 80, 90% of the skills. And so it's kind of like you're adding new skills, but they tend to sometimes forget the old ones is what I find. Is there a best way to teach them something where they retain and keep that and keep adding the skills and don't kind of lose track because they almost have got too much information about too many skills being learned?
Yeah, I just give like one skill, one micro distinction at a time, and then we practice it. So we always do role play. So whenever I teach a new skill, we actually role play like how that's done and how that's infused into a call. So I always feel like that's really, really important. And then that new skill, like it's not about forgetting the old ones. It just gives them like something new to play with, but you don't ever want to like give them the skill. Like let's talk about like, yesterday we did matching and mirroring. So you don't ever want to tell them the skill and then have them go figure it out on their own. Like, what does it actually mean? You want to role play with it so they can like, discover what those micro distinctions and fold that into their current formula.
Now, you've talked about KPIs a few times, and there are some startups on here. So those are key performance indicators or metrics that we're basically tracking. So what are the essential KPIs we need to be tracking for a sales team?
Definitely, you want to have your goal, right? What's your like in goal? So let's say it's 10 closings. And then you want to be able to back out your numbers. So let's say you want to have 10 sales a month or 10 sales a week, right? So let's say you want to have 10 sales a week. And if you know that you're closing, and we'll just say let's just say call it 25%, your closing rate is 25%. So then you back out your number. So if you want to have 10 sales for the week, you close at 25%, that means you need to have 100, 10 times 25 would be 25. Thank you. Yeah. 20. So yeah. Sorry. No, it'd be to have 10 sales, which means you'd have to have 25 conversations.
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
But then you want to have like, what's your no-show rate? So let's say your no-show rate is 50%. So then, which means your numbers is you got to have 50 appointments on the calendar to have 25 conversations to have 10 sales. So you want to have your numbers backed out based on your current like close rate. So, the gal that's closing at 70% needs to have less conversations because she's closing at a higher rate. So you just want to have all of those numbers backed out based on the end result that you want.
What about sales script? Script, no script, process? What works best in your opinion?
So in my opinion, a script framework that has questions for each frame of the call. I think the worst thing that you could do is give a salesperson a script, because then they sound like a robot. They're not actually having a conversation with a person. And typically, a sales script that works for you may not necessarily work for me because we have different personalities. We might ask different questions. And so if you give a new salesperson, like, this is the script you have to follow, then they try so hard to fit into that box. And in my opinion, it doesn't work. If you give them the freedom, if you give them a framework of, these are the points that you need to touch, and let it become their own, and let them embody like their own script and have their own conversations, you're going to have better results.
Well, as we get ready to wrap up, there's one other thing I'm really curious about. What do you think, and what do you train your sales team or sales teams that you build about overcoming objections? What's one of the easiest or best ways that you think salespeople can successfully overcome objections?
So I did a training, which I don't know how we would give it away, but I'm definitely willing to give it away. I did a whole training on how to create intimacy through objections. And to me, a sales conversation doesn't even start happening until you get your first objection. That's my favorite part of a conversation, because that's where the transformation actually happens. Because, our frontal cortex wants to keep us safe. We automatically want to say no to things because change means, unsafety. And so with objections, if you can come to objections with a sense of play, a sense of curiosity, you'll have way more fun overcoming objections, and you'll close more sales. Because like so many times, like, people have this energy around like, oh, if I have an objection, like, I've done something wrong, or I haven't built the value or whatever. And there is a value if you get an objection, there is a value conversation. But objections is really the time where you can create connection and intimacy in the conversation and move people across the line from a place of heart and integrity.
Love it. Anything we haven't covered today that you think it would be good for our audience to know about hiring, onboarding, and getting basically the best performance from their sales team?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is you want to follow a cadence in onboarding that plants your business in the heart of your salesperson. So instead of giving them a bunch of scripts to read and processes to follow, like, the first thing that you want to do when you onboard is like give your salesperson as many customer stories to review, as many testimonials to review, like inundate them with as many success stories as you can, and then ask them about those, have them maybe speak to past customers. If you do that first, it's going to be planted in their heart, and they're going to be so fired up and excited. Then you give them the script, then you give them the process, then you give them all of like the paperwork, if you will. That's way less exciting to any salesperson, but they're going to be more excited to dive into, all the forms that you want to have them like fill out, like all the data that you want them to do. They're going to be way more excited and likely to do all of the data part of a sales role if you give them the stories first.
Love it. Bella, thanks for coming on with us today. Where can everybody go to learn more?
www.alignsales.com.
Alignsales.com. Okay, cool.
Alignsales.com, and then they can find me on the gram at bella.and.verita.
All right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
So this is the difference between everybody's success and failure in a business. It really is. And I can tell you, it's interesting because last year we had kind of this disastrous thing happen where our sales just got cut in half overnight
Mm.
with no explanation of why. And when I dove in, I've realized the hard way that a lot of the principles that Bella's teaching here have to be adopted in an organization to really be able to scale successfully. Otherwise, it's just an absolute mess. Your retention's not there. You've got people that are not effectively selling leads you could be selling. You don't have the standard systems and the KPIs in place to monitor what's going on. And it creates all kinds of issues. Your sales are up and down. And I see this in a lot of organizations. So what Bella talked about today was really the formula, a lot of stages of the formula of finding the right salespeople, hiring the right salespeople, onboarding the right salespeople. But it's not a simple process. It's complicated. So if you want to learn more about how to do this the right way, go to alignsales.com. That's alignsales.com. It's ALIGN sales.com. And on alignsales.com, Bella has a ton of really cool, valuable information that will help you get on the right track to make sure that you're not making the mistake of hiring the wrong salesperson, and that you're onboarding them where they're passionate about your product and about the company, and that they're actually going to perform at a really high level, and that you have the metrics to track that to make sure. And you can see if their performance drops off, and you can make sure that they're rewarded when it even exceeds expectations. So a lot of great info. Go to alignsales.com. That's alignsales.com to be able to learn more. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure you visit alignsales.com to have the best and most effective sales team for your organization.